Welcome to the New Mexico's Influence magazine show, the premier talk show where we introduce you to influential individuals in the state doing significant work. And the magazine is all about celebrating the spirit of diversity. If this is your first time joining us and you'd like more information, please log on to influencenm.com. That's our website. You can find us all over social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest. And for the recording of this particular show, all past shows and future shows, pull us up on YouTube. Go to your search bar, toss in New Mexico's Influence magazine, and it'll pull us up. When you get there, please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and hit that bell so you don't miss any future editions of the show. As you know, with each edition, we introduce you to someone doing great work in the state, and they from all ethnicities and backgrounds and social groups. So with our next guest, I'll bring him on and we'll introduce you to him. We'll come back and bring on the guest for this week. Stay tuned.
Looking to buy, sell, or rent a home? In the market for commercial property, land, or ranch? You've come to the right place. Welcome Home Realty. With over 100 years combined experience in real estate, Micah Swartz, Sharon Carr, and their team of realtors are well known throughout the community. Welcome Home Realty is your best source for all aspects of real estate in Alamogordo, Tularosa, La Luz, Cloudcroft, and all other areas within Otero and Lincoln County. Call for a one-on-one appointment today.
Welcome back to the show. Okay, we're going to be bringing on an individual in a heartbeat here, but I want to introduce you, talk to you a little bit about his background. A manure shoveling farm boy, became a camera packing newspaper reporter, and more. His new book, Plow the Dirt, but Watch the Sky. It's a new release, and it's an emotional journey from A is for America to Z is for Zodiac. Martin Kufus proves a well-lived life doesn't require wealth, a famous surname, or metropolitan upbringing. The book is available for global distribution on Amazon.com, Barnes & Nobles, and some other sites. Martin Kufus, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. I'm glad to be here.
So we got some questions here. Just want to learn a little as much as we can about you, and then obviously we want to talk to you about your book. Now, we actually ordered a copy of the book of a book, but we haven't received it yet. But I'm going to just show everyone the cover, and we're eager to get our copy.
Well, I got mine.
There you go. Excellent. Okay, so tell our viewers a little bit about your background, where you're from, maybe even birth order, and a little bit about your upbringing.
Okay, sure. As I say in my book, I was born and raised in Oklahoma and educated just across the line in Kansas. As far as ethnicity, I'm just sort of your run-of-the-mill German-Irish American Protestant of a middle-class background. I grew up on our family farm in northern Oklahoma, and I was an only child. So I learned at an early age to entertain myself, and reading and media consumption, such as it was back in the 60s, was a big part of my life. And in my book, I touch on many things. I was originally an avid science fiction reader and all that, but branched out. And so I lived on our farm until the age of 18, and my parents divorced when I was 16, and eventually my father grew just weary of running a farm. He didn't have his heart into it, so he sold the farm. And by that time, I was heading to college, and my mom moved away, and that sort of sets the stage for my book.
Okay. How about your educational background?
Okay, I completed public school, graduating from the high school in South Haven, Kansas in 1974. I was graduated from Oklahoma State University in Stillwater in 1980 with a bachelor's degree in news editorial or journalism. And in 1991, I received a master's degree in communication, again, journalism, from Ohio University in Athens. And I was able to go to grad school with money from the then GI Bill. I was a veteran and was able to return to college after my service.
Outstanding. So describe your current situation, kind of a day in the life.
Okay. My wife, Dorinda, who in my book is the Jersey girl, and chapter J is for Jersey, and I live in Las Cruces. She teaches it at home via Zoom to acting and vocal students. I have been working for 8.5 years as a contracted technical editor at White Sands Missile Range, which is about 23 miles away. So on any given workday, I get up with the alarm clock's warning, get around, go to work, and sit in front of 2 computer screens and edit stuff, which I now can talk about because I no longer edit classified, and go to the gym, come home to my loving wife. We spend the evening often eating dinner in front of the TV. We like stuff on prime time, and also the other one, Netflix. We're very partial to British stuff. We like the British copper shows, the Masterpiece Theater kind of stuff. And yes, we've watched The Crown, and we've seen Downton Abbey and all of that stuff. So I'm just a regular guy who gets up, goes to work, comes home, and cherishes my time off.
Nice. So let's talk about your new book. Again, I'm going to just put this up here so folks can take a look at it. Plow the Dirt, but Watch the Sky. True Tales of Manure, Media, Militaries, and More. Tell us all about that.
Okay. Well, the book took me fully 3.5 years to write because, as I said, I have a full-time job. And so I go from 40 hours a week, theoretically, of editing other people's technical writing, and then switching gears on my days off to sit down and write my own, which was sometimes kind of difficult. Hence, it took me a while to write this book. It is something I had been thinking about for probably 15 years. And fully a third of the content is based on events, news stories that I covered as a newspaper reporter or things I wrote about back in my magazine days. I took several of those topics, rewrote them, conducted additional research from a time-lapse perspective, and that's part of my book. Other things are it's largely my experiences. The book is in, as you said, an A to Z format. Chapters ranging from A is for America to Z is for Zodiac. And no, I'm not talking about the stars or the notorious California murderer, the Zodiac. I am talking about Zodiac inflatable boat. And that deals with my time in Texas as a volunteer flood rescue technician. My goal was to, first off, entertain the reader. The worst thing any writer can do, I believe, whether fiction or nonfiction, is to bore the reader and make them regret the time they spent. They're not only giving up their hard-earned money to buy the publication, be it hard copy, paperback, or Kindle, they're also giving them precious time to read the thing. So I want people to be entertained. The book is, even though it has it's memoirish, I don't want people to think it's just, I'm right, me. I am just your narrator. I am your tour guide. I am the train conductor. Each chapter is a whistle stop, as I've said. And I want to expose my reader to situations, things, places, events they maybe have never experienced. For example, if you've never stood in the path of a tornado, Well, I can tell you what that's like. If you've never entered a burning house as a firefighter, I can tell you what that's like. If you've never served in the military or wonder what the Cold War was like, I can tell you about that, and so forth and so on. I want my readers to feel that was really interesting. That was an interesting book, and enjoy themselves. And again, realize that well-written, fact-based nonfiction, and I think my book qualifies, that nonfiction can be as entertaining as fiction. And so I wrote it drawing on my own experiences, but I think that there is a vast audience out there, people who maybe will see themselves in there. Everybody has a story or two or three or a dozen, as I say in my intro. And likewise, everybody you meet has a struggle you know nothing about. So I'm bearing my life and a little bit bearing my soul to my readers, and hoping they come away feeling that their time was well spent with my book.
Outstanding. It's a lot of content, and I've given it a read. Very interesting and intriguing. You obviously had a season of your life where you were in the military.
Yes, sir.
And thank you for your service, by the way.
Oh, you're welcome.
How did you choose the Army over Air Force or any of the other branches?
Well, I could say, well, it was a family thing. My grandfather was drafted into the Army during World War I. He never left Kansas. My dad was drafted into the Army during the Korean War, and he ended up in West Germany and all that. But it really wasn't that. I think, well, when I was a college student, when I was at Oklahoma State University, and I had hit the newspaper reporting business hard. I was consumed with it. And at some point I got to thinking, well, I want to do something else with my life. So I think it was when I saw the movie Apocalypse Now as a college kid at OSU that I started thinking that, wow, the Army does some wild and crazy stuff.
It's interesting.
Right. It's not Vietnam anymore, but I had studied foreign language, German, at Oklahoma State University, which I mentioned in my book. And of course, you go to any military recruiter and say that you've studied a foreign language, then their eyes light up, because it's very hard to get linguists. The military needs many people who can learn foreign languages. So that was kind of how it primed me to go into the Army. I also wanted to do exciting things and go places, go overseas. And I guess I was just more inclined to the Army, or maybe the Marine Corps, than the Air Force or the Navy.
Okay, very good. So what was your inspiration for becoming an author? Why did you decide, I've got to write a book?
You know, Cedric, I reached a point in the not too distant past where I realized that I have far more yesterdays than I have tomorrows. And that someday is now. I had been writing for publication since I was in my 20s. Clear back into the late 70s as a newspaper reporter. And then I went the magazine route. And I've done some online writing. And for one thing, I accumulated so much material. And I got to thinking about it. Well, there was that time, I was in Israel and I was in southern Lebanon on a foreign press tour conducted by the Israeli army. Then there was a time I was here, the time I was there, and I thought, I've got a lot of stuff. I've spent my journalistic career writing about other people, what other people have done, and just being that byline, just that faceless person. I thought, well, maybe it's time I write about my stuff. And it might be enough to fill a book, because as you know, you write about what you know. And having written thousands of stories for newspapers over decades, hundreds of magazines, online work, and also I've edited. Even more than that, I thought, where do I go now? Well, I write a book. So it just came time, and it was just time to write a book. And if I only write one, I will have at least written one and published it.
Good. So that's off the bucket list, right? It's a very good book, though, Martin. I think,
Thank you.
And I think, as you mentioned, it's got something for everybody.
Yeah.
Everyone can almost locate themselves somewhere in the book.
Mm-hmm.
They've had that experience, and again, it's just unique that you're one individual and you've had all those experiences. So, given your deep background with the former Soviet Union, what do you think the motivations are of the Russian state concerning their incursion into Ukraine?
Well, that's a good and timely question. And for the benefit of your viewers who haven't read my book yet or read anything about it, let me just briefly say that in the 1980s in the Army, I served as a Russian linguist in signal intelligence. And my second duty assignment, I was in West Germany at an Army-run National Security Agency field station. And for 2.5 years, I worked in a big windowless building surrounded by electronic equipment with similarly trained people, linguists, wearing headphones. And we were actually intercepting or eavesdropping on live Soviet Army radio traffic coming over from East Germany and points beyond. And I was in West Germany. I was a NATO soldier. I actually spent a couple of brief visits into communist East Berlin. So that's sort of I have an abiding interest in things. The Russian language is a beautiful language. I wish I had studied it more. I wish I hadn't forgotten so much of it. So to your question, the back in the Cold War, there was a certain stability and a certain predictability from the Kremlin. In the good old days of the Cold War, the Soviet communist leadership and the American leadership, they were kind of predictable. There weren't going to be too many surprises. Now, if it went really bad, and World War III did occur, of course, it would have been beyond imagination how horrible it would have been. But there was a certain stability and a predictability. And we could even tell, listening where we were in Augsburg, we knew that the Soviet Army did certain things at certain times, and we were listening for certain activities, certain units, and certain things going on. There was that predictability. Now, things didn't turn out. The Cold War ended. Soviet communism imploded. And many of us naively thought, well, Russia's going to join the community of nations and have a democracy, and everybody has a vote. And it seemed like it was going that way, but corruption took over. And so now you have an ex-KGB agent who is a bully and a xenophobe named Vladimir Putin, who, like most dictators, thinks that he is the country and the country is he. And he ordered this invasion of the Ukraine. From what I gather, without telling too many people, he just thought it up and wanted it done. And believing that, well, if we have ethnic and linguistic ties with the Ukraine, they're really part of a greater Russia. And so he up and did it. February 24 is a date going down in infamy. And he wanted to occupy the Ukraine, did not want it to become a NATO member. And that's part of it. Putin is so arrogant and also paranoid that he's not just protecting what he sees as greater Russia, he's protecting himself. He is filthy rich. His inner circle, the oligarchs, that is the ones who haven't thrown themselves out of windows and otherwise ended up dead mysteriously, those guys also have plundered Russia. They are stinking rich. And so those guys are protecting themselves. They did not want the Ukraine to be part of NATO. And I do believe that if Russia had invaded and conquered Ukraine, it might be turning its sights on Poland next, which is a NATO country. And if that happened, we would be in an outright war with Russia. But things have not turned out the way he thought they would. It was very foolish. Again, there was a certain stability and predictability in the old Soviet Union. I don't think that the Kremlin, even though there was a president, there was a Gorbachev or a whoever there, but one man did just not unilaterally make a decision to invade a neighboring country. There was a whole body, in the Kremlin that would have to be sold on the idea. So that's a big difference there. So we have a very dangerous dictatorship. And Putin every day is behaving more and more like Adolf Hitler. And myself, I know there are people who do not support America's indirect intervention, supplying weapons and so forth to the Ukraine, but I think it is necessary. I think just as Hitler was a bully, he was not stopped until the whole continent was at war. I think that Putin and his inner circle are bullies. I think they need to be stopped. And another thing is in the Soviet days, the Kremlin would not have rattled the nuclear saber the way Putin and his people have been. You didn't make threats about nuking London if things don't turn out the way you want in the Ukraine. You just didn't do that. That was too serious. Just the language of this dictatorship threatening to unleash nuclear weapons is like that's crazy. That's crazy talk.
Yeah.
So I hope I answered your question.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And history would have it that these type of dictatorships don't end well.
No.
And you may get by, but you won't get away. Eventually something will happen and they come tumbling down. So, okay, we're talking to Martin Kufus. We're going to take a break. We'll come right back and have more in a minute. Stay tuned.
Everybody has a story to tell, or two, or three, or a dozen. If you've lived long enough, you will have experienced, maybe barely survived, real-life episodes that change you and never quite leave you. There are always little reminders.
Presented by Cedric D. Fisher and Company Publishers. Martin Kufus is a man who has lived many lives. He's been a cold warrior, a traveler, a writer. Plow the Dirt but Watch the Sky is a collection of his stories, taking you from the streets of Soviet East Germany to the fields of Oklahoma and to the pirate-infested waters of the Indian Ocean aboard a massive cargo vessel. If you're into true and real-life tales of action, adventure, intrigue, and even a bit of ironic humor, Plow the Dirt but Watch the Sky by Martin Kufus should be the next title on your bookshelf or e-reader.
Welcome back to New Mexico's Influence magazine. We're here with new author Martin Kufus. Welcome back, Martin.
Thank you.
All right, let's talk about some of your extracurricular activities. How'd you get started, and just enlighten us?
Well, one thing, extracurricular activity, I'm maybe not as much as a few years ago, but a kind of a gym rat. I actually enjoy pretty much working out and staying healthy, and not knowing that time, friction, and gravity conquer everybody, but I'm trying to resist those forces as much as possible and stay healthy. So
that's a good hobby.
Well, it's a good hobby.
Yeah.
And in fact, in 2018, speaking of New Mexico, in 2018, I completed the 26.2 mile Baton Memorial Death March Marathon at White Sands Missile Range. And I mention that in the book. And I had done the 14.2 mile honorary 3 years prior, but in 2018, I trained up, walked hundreds of miles, and actually did the marathon, and don't plan to do that again because 2 years later I had to have hip replacement, which is in chapter X is for X-rays. But outdoors stuff, physical fitness, I like to read when I can. In fact, book I'm reading now, and it sort of just dropped in my lap, is it's kind of an espionage international crime thing, A Long Night in Paris, written by a guy who's a former Israeli military intelligence, or maybe not military, but intelligence agency officer, fictionalized account, which I kind of have an abiding interest in Israel and its military and the vaunted Mossad and so forth. So I do some reading, and if I had time, I would like to get back into fishing. There's Elephant Butte Lake just up the road, but in fact, my minister and I and some of the guys from our church planned to do some fishing up there, get together and all that. And then along came COVID, and everything changed. Yeah. But I sometimes threaten Dorinda that someday I'd like to get back into skydiving, and she said, "No, you're not going to skydive. And what about your back? Yeah. What about this? What about that?" And I say, "Well, okay, you got me there." So yeah, I and then, as I said, we watch TV, we take in movies. I am married to a woman who has a long background in performing arts and theater. So she's broadened my horizons too, as far as the content we take in, TV shows and movies.
Very nice. Very nice. You've shared with me offline that you've got kids, and you're very fond of your wife and your marriage. What would you consider to be, and you got an extensive professional career, and you're still in the work world. What would you consider to be your greatest accomplishment of all of that experience in life?
Well, I knew a question like that was coming, and I thought, that's sort of like saying, "What's your favorite song?" Well, there are so many. What's your favorite movie? Well, there's so, it's like, what's your favorite book? Yeah. And I think, though, looking at this stage of my life, that my greatest accomplishment is that I'm still alive and I'm still kicking, which might sound silly, but I've had many opportunities to bring everything to a screeching halt through the years, and through misadventure, through accidents, through events out of my control. There have been opportunities where I could have been killed and wouldn't be here today, wouldn't have written a book, wouldn't have, all these things. So I think my greatest accomplishment is that I was able to keep myself alive and healthy and productive. Ultimately, I'm in my third marriage, very happy. We are comfortable, and getting to the point where I could write a book like this. I could not have written Plow the Dirt, But Watch the Sky 30 years ago. I couldn't have written a book like that 20 years ago. I couldn't have written that book 10 years ago. It took a while for me to get to this point. And so despite all of the opportunities to not live long, I have managed to get to this point where, we're having this conversation. And I recently just turned 66. So that's my greatest accomplishment, is that I'm still here.
That you're still standing.
Yes.
Yep, it's definitely a blessing. So let me ask you this question. Obviously folks that have known you for a good long while are pretty familiar with everything that there is to know about you. But what's the one thing that people don't know about you but should?
That's kind of a difficult question, but in my book, again, I'll take it, keep it focused on the book. Someone reads this and might think, this guy's a tough guy. This guy is a real, pardon my language, he's a real badass. He's done all this stuff, and oh my gosh. And what I would want people to know is that, and I make it clear in the book, I'm not a combat veteran. The Cold War never turned hot. As far as being around truly tough guys and all that, I've been around some really tough people who have been in combat, who risked death, who have killed the enemy, who have done audacious, daring, extremely dangerous things. Those are the tough guys. I'm not really a tough guy. I've done some tough guy stuff, but I don't consider myself that kind of guy. I've been there. I've been around them.
Yeah.
I can write about it. Even at Soldier of Fortune magazine, I was an editor there for a couple of years in the 90s. There were people walking around in our offices who ex-French Foreign Legionnaire, for example, people like that. And it's like, oh man, I can't even imagine the stuff that they've been through and survived. And I just felt like sometimes I've been around people who just made me feel like a little kid. And in terms of that walk of life. So people reading my book, they should know that, I've done some interesting things. The war I was prepared for, trained for, never occurred. And thank God.
Okay. It's a good thing.
So.
Yeah. Okay. So what you're saying is you're not the Rambo type.
No.
Although one could get that perception after they start reading the book. Sure. So obviously this is your book now. You're a new author and you'll spend as much time with it as you can. But most professionals and leaders that we meet, one thing we notice is they're all readers. Leaders are readers. They're typically reading a book, sometime maybe 2 or 3. They may have one at the office, one in the glove compartment, and one in the bathroom, one on the nightstand. But their go-to book is typically found in their nightstand, Martin. What book's on your nightstand?
Well, I don't have any on my nightstand right now, but I go through a series of books. So the one I just cited that was translated from Hebrew, that is one. I do keep a Bible nearby, and once in a while I do refer to it. You come away from my book realizing, I am unashamedly a Protestant, and I do read the Bible. I'm looking over. I think one book that I've came back to, as far as coming back to, was Colonel James Nick Rose, 5 Years to Freedom. And he was the Special Forces officer who, as a young man, was captured in Vietnam and spent 5 years in Viet Cong captivity and escaped and went back to the Army and set up survival and evasion training for people like me. And his book is brutal and recounting his experiences. And so every once in a while, I've gone back and read that. I think I've read Hunter Thompson's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas at least 3 times. It's a guilty pleasure because it's like, my gosh, how could anyone do what he claimed he did? And then Johnny Depp made a movie about it. So I read a lot. I try to stay abreast in the news. So unfortunately, newspapers being where they are now, I don't read newspapers as often as I'd like, but I do read several news websites every day. Yeah. And the nature of my work, I read a great deal of technical documents written by Army civilians mostly. So I read a lot. Some of it's not fun, but I try to stay fairly well informed about what's going on. And in preparation for this book, and during the lockdown, I started pulling books off the shelf and just reading. I read Jack Kerouac's On the Road, that the Beat Generation. I read 2 or 3 Kurt Vonnegut novels and things like that my wife had. So it can just vary. That's
good. You're an avid reader.
I am an avid reader. A lot of it is in connection with my work.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, we covered a lot of detail here, and folks can always follow you in social media. I'm sure you'll have frequent social media postings going up. So, Martin, we want to thank you for coming on the show today. We've learned a lot. I want to encourage everyone, get the book. It's in Kindle form. It'll be in paperback and will be hardcover. By all means, keep in touch with the Martin Kufus brand, because this is only Martin's first book. So thank you for coming to the show again. Remember, this year's show will show some new unique things. We'll do a little more travel, and we're looking for destinations to come visit. So if you think you've got a destination that would make sense for our viewers, give us a call. You can reach us on social media. Thank you for coming on the show. We'll see you next time.